Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. So, this topic again was something requested by one of you all, like what happens during the phase when our divine masculine collapses, like when the karmic illusion breaks. So I wanted to, delve right into topic and before I delve into topic, I hope you guys are having a good blood moon eclipse today. The energies are very, very strong. So just connect to the energies and remember all the power resides within you. Power is within you. External teachers like us are meant to awaken your inner teacher. So always trust your inner teacher, your higher self, and God. All right. So let me delve right into topic. Collapse doesn't mean our divine masculine suddenly wakes up one morning, leaves the karmic, or snaps out of its silent initiate phase and runs towards us. Collapse is subtle, slow, and deep. It's when the weight of living a double life, 5D union with you, on a soul level, and 3D mask for the category 1 karmic detours, 3D mask with another in body becomes too heavy to sustain. And our divine masculine's nervous system can only carry the split for a while, for so long, right? So eventually, pretending to be joyous with the karmic takes a toll on the divine masculine. It totally drains him. His mask slips, the moment of emptiness multiplies, and this is the beginning of the collapse. So many of you guys, divine feminines, ask me, how do I know if he's collapsing? The signs are rarely public. Collapse happens behind closed doors, but look for these patterns. All right, restlessness and mood swings. So usually in a monadic twin flame situation, we can feel our divine masculine's energy, right? So restlessness and mood swings, especially it can also be visible online, or subtle shifts in tone, increase withdrawal. He will start posting less, engaging less, and he will start avoiding eye contact with the karmic. You will just feel like the relationship is breaking. Another thing is strange contradictions, saying one thing, doing another, because his inner truth is breaking through. So you will see a lot of unpredictability, lesser. um, he won't be going out as much with the other party. He might suddenly call on for a divorce if he's married. He might suddenly break up, suddenly disappear. Because with category 1 divine masculines, they tend to leave some kind of like a social media footprint. It's category 2 where it's totally silent. It's, in fact, it's the opposite. When our DM posts, all of a sudden it's often like a message to the DF, hey, I'm alive, kind of thing. But there are many layers to it. But for category 1, often you can feel the withdrawal, and this is exactly when you would start thinking and feeling more and more about your divine masculine. That's why you'll feel strange contradictions. He will be saying one thing and doing another, because his inner truth is breaking through. As the veil burner, you are like burning his veil. Silent longing. You may feel him more strongly in the 5D during this collapse, because when his mask falls, his soul reaches for you more openly. So this is a question that many of you guys ask, right? Like, why does the collapse get triggered by the karmic? Ironically, the karmic doesn't protect him from you. She pushes him towards collapse. And you may ask me why. Because the karmic can never embody the soul recognition your divine masculine feels with you. The more he tries to offer the karmic what was meant for you, the more hollow it feels. That's when the divine masculine starts asking himself, why am I giving so much but still feeling empty? See, collapse is the karmic's real role. Not to steal him, but to drain him out of every ounce of avoidance until he has no choice but to face himself and therefore face you. So, the divine masculine's inner dialogue during the collapse is often something to think about, all right? Because this is the stage where his thoughts becomes conflicted. Like literally, he would be thinking that this would make him happy, but he still thinks about you. And he would be thinking like, why does he feel so alive when he's with you, his divine feminine, but so flat when he's with the karmic? And he would be thinking like, if you, his divine feminine, loved him that deeply, why did he push you away? Like all these conflicting thoughts will come in. This is not weakness, this is initiation. Collapse strips his ego layer by layer until all that is left is truth. And what is our role as the divine feminine during his collapse? Here's where many divine feminines sabotage themselves. You sense his collapse and rush to save him. You want to message, you want to prove your presence, you want to remind him of love, but that interrupts the process. It's like the whole man cave analogy. He's inside the man cave trying to make a decision on what he wants to do, and you are waiting right outside. So remember, our role as the divine feminine is not to rescue our divine masculine. Our role is to hold frequency steadily while he breaks apart. And that collapse must feel unbearable to him so that he cannot avoid the truth anymore. If you soothe it too soon, he rebuilds the mask. If you let him collapse, he rebuilds into union. All right, so that's why collapse is the gateway to union. Understand this: collapse is not failure, it's progress. Our divine masculine's collapse is his soul finally overpowering his ego. His karmic mask shatters, and though he may resist, though he may lash out, though he may retreat, he cannot unknow what he feels with you. And this collapse is the necessary death of his old identity. And only from here he can step into his divine masculine energy, ready to meet you as the divine feminine, not from ego but from soul. So, when you feel his collapse, when you sense his restlessness, when the karmic projection looks less convincing, when you hear his voice in 5D more desperately, don't panic. Don't intervene. Don't doubt yourself. Trust the breakdown. Trust the collapse, because what looks like him falling apart is actually him falling back into the only place he was meant to be, with you in union in truth. So, this is a big question that many of you guys ask me, right? How do divine masculines rebuild after collapse? So see it this way, all right? It's often a silent reconstruction. Collapse doesn't end with him rushing back to you immediately. Collapse ends in silence. After his world crumbles, the karmic illusions, the ego masks, the false commitments He withdraws. He goes quiet, not because he doesn't feel you, but because he doesn't know how to approach you in his new state. And this silence is not rejection, it is recalibration. His soul is relearning how to function without the ego armor he wore for so long. So during this phase, the DM feels fragile. He has admitted to himself, even if only subconsciously, that the karmic template doesn't work. He knows he can't replicate union elsewhere, but he also fears being unworthy of you. So he begins rebuilding himself in small ways, focusing on career, refining his appearance, testing new habits. So to the outside world, these changes look superficial, but internally he's whispering, maybe I can be enough for her one day. So many divine feminines ask me this, if he knows now, why won't he just reach out? Because reconstruction requires solitude. Imagine breaking a bone and setting it again. The cast must stay in place until it heals, right? If it comes to you too soon, while still fragile, the union frequency can't hold. He distances himself not out of rejection, but out of fear, that he will collapse again in front of you. Silence becomes his shield until he feels strong enough to stand before you without breaking. And one of the hardest things for the Divine Feminine collective, for the Divine Feminine, as the Divine Feminine, to watch is when our DM is testing himself with others, jobs, social settings, sometimes even lingering karmic ties. This isn't about love, it's about proving to himself that he can stand on his own 2 feet. He must test his new foundation in the ordinary world before he can bring himself into sacred union with you. So don't mistake these tests for betrayal. They are rehearsals, and rehearsals always fall flat until he chooses the true performance with you. And of course, transcending the performance, right? So, our role as the Divine Feminine is this. Our Divine Masculine doesn't need our advice, reminders, or rescues. What he needs is the steady hum of our field, the knowledge that when he's ready, you are still anchored in truth, in integrity. So that's why neutrality, I always talk about neutrality, go into the state of neutrality, because neutrality is our greatest gift here. Our ability to hold the 5D frequency without clinging to the 3D timeline gives our Divine Masculine the safety to rebuild his own face. So throughout this phase, one question would haunt him. Am I enough for her? It's the question behind his silence, his testing, his hesitation, and this applies for both categories, category 1 and category 2. And ironically, the only way he can answer is by standing in front of you one day and realizing you never needed him to be perfect, only real. So understand this, reconstruction is the quiet before the return. It's the silent phase where he gathers himself not to run further, but to come back stronger. If collapse was his death, reconstruction is his resurrection. And when he finally steps out of the silence, you will see not a fractured man who hid behind masks, but the beginning of the divine, awakening Divine Masculine, ready to meet you in union. So I know this part is what you guys probably are waiting for. How does our Divine Masculine approach us, his Divine Feminine, after the reconstruction? So most of us Divine Feminines imagine our Divine Masculine's return as a dramatic scene, apologies, confessions, a sudden rush into union. But real returns are rarely cinematic, and I'm speaking from my own experience. They're actually very, very awkward, very hesitant, because there is this stage that happens, from my own experience. There'll be a stage whereby you're in complete neutrality, in total surrender state, and you're fully focused on your mission. And when our DM comes back, the initial coming back can feel very awkward to us, the divine feminine, you know, and awkward to our divine masculine too. That's why awkward is a big theme in our twin flame connection, the word awkward. Sometimes you'll be like, why must our DM keep saying awkward? Because he's really awkward. His nervous system is collapsing before you, and your nervous system is also collapsing before him, right? So it is awkward, hesitant, full of half steps. Why? Because after the collapse and reconstruction, our divine masculine is very raw and reverent. He knows what you mean to him, but he's terrified of disappointing you. That's what my divine masculine was feeling. He was terrified of failing me again. Is terrified of failing you again. So the return often starts subtly, a message out of nowhere, slowly testing the field. And often, so this time round, when he messages, at least for me, you don't go all like, here's message to you finally. You're actually responding from a very calm state. So when the message comes out of nowhere, where he's testing the field, the question that seems trivial, it will often be like a question that seems utterly trivial, but it's actually an opening, or it could be bumming into each other, like a physical encounter that feels accidental. What he's doing here is testing the waters. He's saying, can I approach my divine feminine? Will she burn me, or will she still see me? So he's kind of testing the field. Is she still angry with me? Is she still raging? Is she still disappointed? Is she still energetically, is she still stabilizing the field? So the first signs are small, because they are not about proving himself to you. They are about proving to himself he can stand in your field without collapsing. So many of us divine feminines are shocked at how unpolished the return feels. So even though as a psychic I knew how my DM was going to come to me, and I knew exactly how, but when I was experiencing it, the feeling was so surreal. So an example, right? He may fumble his words, avoid eye contact, or in some cases he might act defensive. But clumsiness is not disinterest, remember. So that's why it may look clumsy. His return may look clumsy, but that is not disinterest. It's actually reverence. He feels like he's standing in front of the only person who ever truly saw him, and that level of exposure makes him feel like a beginner again. So instead of demanding perfection, see the sacredness in his clumsiness. He took a lot. So this is how I saw it. My DM came back. It's like it took a lot for him to like come back after the silence, after the separation, after the period of no contact. So this is proof that you're not just another person to him. You are the one who disarms him. So let's talk about the hidden reverence beneath his hesitation. Beneath his hesitation is reverence. He remembers your tears, your love, your patience. We often think our DM doesn't feel anything, he doesn't know anything. But really, when I speak with my DM, it's far from the truth. He always felt more than what I felt. He felt my emotions more than I would have felt my own emotions or feelings. So that's why, you know what I mean. So he knows, our divine masculine knows, even if he never says it, that you waited in ways no one will ever, no one else ever would, and that reverence makes him cautious. He doesn't want to rush and break what is sacred. He doesn't want to offer you a half-formed version of himself. So his hesitation is not avoidance, it's actually honor. Alright, so that's why our role as the divine feminine during the return, our role here is discernment, not rushing to embrace every breadcrumb as reunion, but also not shutting down the small openings. So think of yourself as the empowered divine feminine, steady enough to allow his clumsy steps to land, but strong enough not to accept less than the truth. Not clumsy, but more awkward. So you don't need to chase, fix, or prove. Your presence itself is the invitation. When you remain anchored, his small steps eventually grow into full approach. That's why the return is not a process nor a moment. It's beyond that. It's a journey on itself, so this is the key. The return is not one dramatic moment. It's a series of openings, retreats, and reopenings. He steps forward, tests your energy, pulls back, and a lot of divine feminines, when he tests the field, tend to scare him away. All right? Sometimes it's like you're like 3 years later he messages you, you just want to be passive aggressive on him, but again, honor that. If you're feeling that way, it just means that you have not recalibrated yet, but he will come back again. That's the thing, so he steps forward, tests your energy, pulls back, recalibrates, then comes closer again. This rhythm is how he builds trust in himself, in the bond, in the connection, in the reality of union. The return is not an event. It's like I said, it's not exactly a process. It's more than a process of unfolding, and each step is sacred. So that's why. So that's why. When our divine masculine returns, it's not about fireworks, it's about truth. It's the quiet courage to face you after collapse, to risk rejection. There's a big chance that we could reject, right? Because we're talking about time lapse here, years. He's returning after years. What if you have someone else? What if you have moved on? What if you're committed? He doesn't have any kind of anchor. So it's a huge risk. He's taking a risk of rejection. But think about how much he loves you. And to finally stand in the union field without masks. So it may look awkward, it may feel hesitant, but amid all the reference for you, for the journey, for the sacred bond, that no karmic projection or misdirection or avoidance or silence could ever replace. So when he returns, you will realize it wasn't about the speed of his arrival. It was about the depth of his becoming. So that's why, guys, I want you to take a moment, to reflect. Even though, as divine feminines, the collapse we go through and the collapse our divine masculine goes through might be different, but we both collapse before union. All right, it's 2:22:22 in terms of time, so I'll close it here. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this discourse. And if you guys want to work one-on-one with me, you can book via my website. All my sessions, all my one-to-one sessions are conducted via video call, and they are live, so you can ask me all the questions you want, and so you can book one of my psychic guidance sessions. All right, then, see you all again with another video, and I thank you all for your recommendations. Keep coming in. You can recommend me topics, and I will, all my knowledge comes from my higher self, directly from cosmic consciousness. All right, with that, see you all again. Bye bye.